What is up? Hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Back with some more ResidentEvil Reverse gameplay for you. And today I got a bunch of Chris games for you because Chris is the topic of this video. And I've wanted to do this video for a little while now. If you've seen any of my older ResidentEvil videos, you may have picked up on the fact that I am not a big Chris fan. Now, I don't hate Chris. I want to state that right now. It's not like I'm seeing him and I'm just like, oh, God, why? No. Now, I do think he is highly overexposed, but I don't hate him. So, if you're thinking, oh, I just absolutely despise everything about him, no, I don't. I just don't like him. I could have a whole echelon of Resident Evil characters I would probably take over him. But you might be thinking, well, how is it that I don't care to like about Chris too much? Like, what is it about him that just doesn't, I guess, interest me or make me care too much for him? First, we had to understand Chris Redfield as a whole. So, without further ado, let's get it right into it. Now, Chris Redfield is definitely one of the most important characters, and a lot of people might just say the main character of Resident Evil, the franchise. And I'm not here to debate if he's the main character, even though it definitely feels like that lately, just because of how much Capcom uses him all the time. But he's definitely one of the most important. There's no debate about that. He's definitely one of the iconic and famous characters of the entire franchise. You can never take that away from him. And once again, I'm not advocating for him to disappear for permanently. I just feel like he should be placed to the sideline. But he is very important to the franchise, no question about it. However, let's get into the first thing that I do not like about him. It kind of just annoys me. Chris, it's kind of a two-parter. Chris is someone who's either A, the most generic, bland character, or B, the most overly emotional in moments that don't make sense. So let's start with the first half. Bland and generic. Now, when Resident Evil was first released and it came out and whatnot, the problem I've always had with Chris is he never feels like, I'll say from the beginning all the way up to Resident Evil 5, he never felt like somebody that was really going through a survival horror experience. He kind of just felt like some dude just showing up to work every day. Like when you play the original Resident Evil 1, he's just kind of there. He's a STARS member. He shows up there. He sees the undead for the first time. He's just like, just another day at work. I always laugh at the one scene from the original Resident Evil 1 on the PS1, where, and by the way, the whole voice acting was just a complete comedy thing as it on its own regard, because I just laugh at all that shit. But the scene where after the tyrant impales Wesker and he walks towards Chris, and Chris is just like, you won't kill me. I mean, I swear that just is my definition of just, like, nothing phases this guy. Like, he just sees this stuff for the first time, just like, well, okay, whatever. No big deal here. Just another day at work for me. And he just goes about his merry way. Meanwhile, and granted, I'm being fair, that game probably is not the greatest example of showcasing, the characters and whatnot, because the voice acting was so bad, but it was so bad it was good. But even in the remake, he just never gives me that feel of a guy really going through a lot of that stuff. It just feels like he's been doing it for like 100 years, and he's like, yeah, another day for me. Meanwhile, when you play as Jill acts like a living, breathing person that you could expect. Like, yeah, she's also a STARS member. She does have training, but, seeing the undead for the first time, she's panicking, she's falling down, she's throwing up, like, doing things that I would expect anyone seeing that shit for the first time would probably feel, despite of all the, training and whatnot. But Chris just never gives me that feeling. He's like that generic action hero person that just comes in there and just shoots and blows up everything and whatnot. I mean, the most iconic part about Chris in terms of any type of characterization for the longest time is just when he got muscular and big and punched boulders. But is that like something that makes me go interested? For me personally, no. I just look at it more as a joke. But anyway, so up to that point, from the beginning to about Resident Evil 5, he's just this boring dude. Like, even in Code Veronica, like, granted, I'll be fair, he's probably my favorite character in Code Veronica, but it's not because I think he's that good. It's just that everyone else in that game is either A, psychotic or insane, and not in good ways either, or B, just overly emotional at moments that just don't really make too much sense and just kind of annoys me. Where Chris is so bland and boring, it kind of wins out in the end. I'm just like, okay, Chris, well, you won that one for me. And it sucked because I do like Claire, but I'm not the greatest fan of some of her moments in that game. But anyway, moving on. Thing about Chris, here's another Capcom property I can relate Chris to. And by the way, I don't know what it is, but I just every time I see it, I just feel like he's like that Arnold Schwarzenegger moment where he's got like a machine gun. I'm sorry, I won't ever do that again. Well, I can't make any promises, but anyway, moving on. Chris reminds me a lot like Ryu from Capcom, another Street Fighter. Well, I mean Street Fighter, another Capcom property. Just another generic, bland, boring character that's apparently the main character of the whole thing, but bores the holy shit out of me. I would take so many characters over him, but of course he's going to get all the fights, win all the battles, win the final battle, be the best of the whole thing, but he's the most boring, bland, generic person I've ever seen in my life. Like, why is it it's always like that with fighting games? They always have, like, the entry characters are never the main characters. The main character is always this bland, boring, generic person, but that's kind of how Chris is to me. But then he gets to part 2. So how can he be the most generic, bland, boring character, but then you get mad when he gets emotional, or and I say overly emotional? So I just want some middle ground. But here, and it's not the fact he gets overly emotional, it's the fact that he gets overly emotional in something that doesn't make any sense. Now, in Resident Evil 6, he has a moment where he has his whole squad get killed. And by the way, the squad that gets killed are these just generic, with exception of one person, everyone else is just a bunch of soldiers. You don't know who they are, and one guy gets named Finn. And you just, they try to make it so like, oh, you're supposed to care about, he's there for one chapter. I'm not going to care about a guy who's there for one chapter. I mean, come on now. I cared more about Marvin than I ever will do Finn. But anyway, so Finn dies, they all get killed, and Chris loses his shit and goes off on a tangent and disappears for 6 months. And Pierce finds him, and he's trying to get him back, but he's just acting like a depressed loser, and he finally has enough of his shit, and he's just like, you know, I can't believe the legendary Chris Redfield is like this. And then he says a line that, I swear when it was said, I just kind of, just, like, really, where he's just like, you know, I can't believe, I'm so glad Finn doesn't have to see you like this. What would he do if he saw you looking like this? And I'm thinking to myself, you know what would have been a better thing? And I've mentioned this before, if they ever remake Resident Evil 5 or 6 or whatnot, I said that line would have had so much more weight if he added, I don't know, a person that's a lot more close to Chris than any of those characters were. Characters that's been with Chris for God knows how many years. Some character by name, you may have heard of her name, Jill. If he said, you know, I can't believe Jill, what would she do if he saw you like this? And I was saying, you know, that's kind of funny because you get all overly emotional about all these random soldiers dead that we don't care about as fans. But yet when Jill not only died, but seemingly sacrificed her life to save you and seemingly died in the process, what did Chris do? He was like, screamed his name, but then what did he do? I mean, we don't have an exact timeline, but he just went back to work the next day. Just went back and, you know, went back to fighting for the BSAA again, I guess. And I was just like, if he got him overly emotional after Jill supposedly died and, like, left the thing for 6 months and was a depressed mess, I'd understand that. I wouldn't have a problem with that. But apparently he just gets over emotional with random soldiers. But Jill, no big deal. Who's Jill? I mean, I ask that question a lot of times. So a lot of people probably just like, who is Jill? Half the time we don't even see her, only in remakes. But that's another tangent for another day. But it's like, Chris, can we have emotions that make sense? Like, you're either boring or you're emotional in scenes that don't make sense. I mean, come on now. Like, if you got all over emotional with Jill and whatnot, and you wanted to, like, you were depressed, or you found out she was and still around, and you want to get revenge or something like that, like how he was when he was trying to get after Carla, which, you know, in Resident Evil 6, we don't understand that, but it's just, it doesn't make sense. Like, come on. But man, oh man, it's just, it's frustrating because it's like they have a concept, but it's like they want to fall upon like just the generic trope, or just make him have emotions, but it doesn't make sense what other things have already happened before in the game. It's just one of those moments that's like, I could see him be a cool, interesting character, but it's like Capcom just doesn't see it that way. And he does have his fan base, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't say he's the the most popular, but like he's definitely extremely well, like he got a lot of fans, so no question about that. By the way, I know story from the story, but watch this whole sequence here. So I'm trying to kill this boss man. I don't know how. I just get the most unlucky series of misfortune events, and I die by boss man here. And I'm looking at the score. I'm like, it's possible. Also, it's tied, and Predator Slasher ties me. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta find somebody, or maybe he'll die. And time's running out. I'm trying to find somebody, and I'm just like, oh fuck. And right at the last second, watch this shit. So the score changes. And I'm like, what the fuck just happened? And all of a sudden, the dude behind me is boss man. He's 1 point under, and I didn't realize it was not Predator Slasher. I thought he lost a point. I was like, how do you lose a point? But no, what happened was that boss man that I couldn't go earlier kills the Predator Slasher at the last second, literally at the last millisecond, and drops Predator Slasher down 5 points. But he scores just not quite enough points, but he scores 1 point under what I had, as you can see here, right at the last second. Not that thing, but the next one that pops up halfway through the screen. And he gets that 261, 1 point less than what I had. I was like, God damn, man, like, damn, he almost completed the miracle comeback, but oh well. But getting back to Chris, now let's get to my next problem with Chris. And ironically, I'm looking at Leon when I said it, because I'll be fair, Leon's my second favorite character from Resident Evil, but Leon has this same problem, so it's me being fair and not just being biased, because I don't want to have a bias. I have personal preferences, but I don't want to have a bias when I was happy. Leon has the same problem as Chris. They're both overexposed. Listen, I love Leon, not Chris obviously too much, but both of them have been in way too many games. I mean, I cry all the time about, like, man, do you ever give Jill and Claire some respect and love? I mean, you brought them back in remakes, but, like, what about newer games or whatnot that we haven't made? But now I'm thinking, well, damn, they're two of the famous characters. I mean, you say Chris, Jill, Leon, and Claire are the main four characters, right? If they can't even respect half the main character cast, what chance does anyone else have in this franchise? I mean, holy shit. It's like, I've always said, it's like they got an overexposure of Chris or a little bit of Leon or whichever flavor is in the month, the Chris and Leon flavor. And once again, I love these characters, but, like, you gotta put them on the back burner sometimes. Like, we've seen enough of them. Like, Chris and Leon are not the center of the Resident Evil universe. They're a part of it, they're a big part, but they're not the only part. There's so many mugs in this franchise that have had one game and we never see them again, or have had multiple games in the past, I'm talking about 2 decades in the past, and then they just magically disappear with no information on them whatsoever. But I feel like Chris and Leon will be in like 100 years old and we still be having them in the main character spot or have a big part in this role. It's just like Capcom, like, give them a break. What is your obsession with both these people? Because people have always said, like, hey, you know, Leon, they have the obsession with the CGI movies, which they do, and then Chris right now just putting them in all the games and whatnot. It's like, there are other people, like, damn, you know, but it's just, ugh. I love Resident Evil, I love it to death, but it does have its frustrating aspects to it, which I just wonder, like, why? Like, why? We can easily remedy and fix this stuff, and fans would love it, alright? It's just, man, it mind boggles me, but let's get into something that, let's end this video a little bit better, because I don't want to be bashing on Chris all day, because what is my favorite interpretation of Chris of the multiple interpretations? Because for somebody that, you know, from the beginning, he has multiple different looks, interpretations. I'll be honest with you, ironic enough, I think I like his village one the best. And you could say that, hey, maybe that's not the most popular thing to say, but I don't know, it's just, I can see him being a battered war veteran who's been in so many situations. He got his own squad, does his own things, not afraid to take brash action. He's seen so much shit. I don't know, I just kind of like that. I rolled with that. That was probably the one that I could, if I saw that, that'd be fine. I wouldn't have a problem with that, and it was definitely very entertaining. So I like that, Chris, you know, an older, you know, veteran experience. So maybe that's the one we need to have early on, but of course he had to go through all that experience to get to that point. But unfortunately, it just seems like, I don't know, it's just, some days, it's back and forth with Chris, back and forth. But once again, I don't hate him. I just don't like him. He's just kind of there, but But let me know in the comment section if you are a Chris fan. If you are happen to be a Chris fan, what is it about him that you like? Is there like certain things he does, or you just like a personality, or is it because once again, some things just they work for other people, but don't work for some people. Everyone's different, so I always like to hear. I'm interested to hear the Chris fans, not the people who may possibly agree with me, but let me know if you're just someone who agrees with someone I said, or maybe you don't. Don't be afraid to say it. I will definitely listen to anything you have to say, and don't be shy about it, 'cause I'm always interested to hear a new perspective and whatnot. But that is going to be it for my Chris video, and as I said, I finally got back to playing. I hadn't played him for a while in this game, and yep, he's as overpowered as I ever could imagine here, even though this game sucked right here because there's only 3 people left in it. But yeah, just that power glove punch and invincibility it's a hard thing to beat, especially if you get it in hands of a good player. I'm not a good player, I'm an average player, so get him in the hands of a good player, he is just an overpowered, unstoppable force of nature. But that is going to be it. If you did enjoy this video, as I said, leave a comment down below. I'd really be interested to hear any people who are huge Chris fans, what makes them happy to see him. And hopefully I can see you guys back with the next one as Chris does his Arnold impersonation right there with a machine gun. But hopefully I can see you guys back with the next one. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope I can see you guys later. Peace.